Well, hello and welcome back to the Town Manifesting Tarot, the most unusual tarot reading on the internet, practically any place else, for two reasons. First of all, it is grounded in reality. We don't do the rainbows, the unicorns, none of the fantasy stuff. We don't do that. We live in a very tumultuous, critical time. Humanity literally stands on a knife blade, and we can easily tip either way. So that's number one. This is a reality check using tarot. Second reason is I combine the tarot with astrology numerology. Let me explain how all of this works. The idea is to get you to manifest, create pictures, create your own kryptonite in your own mind, not from a desktop, a laptop, a smartphone, AI, none of that, but within you. It has to come from you and going out into the world, not the other way around. It doesn't work that way. That's why, in many cases, we do manifest, but in a negative way. We are limited to our physical world, our 3D world around us. We're not getting the most. The idea is to manifest, to create that human kryptonite, that tarot frequency. That's the goal of this reading. Tarot is the final destination. However, you have to give it perspective, and that we do with astrology numerology. By the way, I've done tarot for over 20 years, found out from my experience, tarot doesn't predict a damn thing. But it is the science of potential, your potential to create pictures, to create kryptonite. On the other hand, we have numerology and astrology. They are the sciences of cycles, within cycles, within cycles, within cycles, which makes it extremely difficult. Like I said, I've done astrology for over 50 years, and to try to get a good, clear reading for people is almost impossible because there's too many parts and pieces. It's chop suey. And by the time you're done, the person who you're doing the reading for rightly should be confused. What do I grab onto? What do I do? Now, if you have a very specific targeted question, that helps the reader from the astrology numerology point of view. But if you don't, say, give me a general forecast, it's shit city. Too many parts and pieces, too many things. At that point, the reader is reading for you. What will make you feel good? Not what is an accurate reading, what will make you feel good. Same thing, by the way, with tarot, except on a much simpler, more direct way. But the fact of the matter is, I combine the numerology, the astrology, and the tarot. Numerology, astrology is kind of the menu, and the tarot is the meal that you choose. Okay? So you have your choices laid out there with the numerology and astrology, and then you pick from the menu. That's the tarot. That's the ultimate goal. Now, in terms of numerology, we're in September. It's a 9-month in a 9-year. We are wrapping things up. And that's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, it can be. You take energy, you can use it positively, negatively. It's up to you. But at this point, if we look around us, we are on the verge of giving up our humanity. I mean, it's real close. And for people who don't understand this, you're morons. I don't know where you've been the last 5 years, especially. Probably with your head up your ass and not wanting to hear anything. But the fact of the matter is, if you look around you, they are using technology to steal our humanity, and they're real, real close. And this will be a significant month, 9-month, universal 9-year. Of course, in January, that means number 1 year, we begin a new cycle. That is to be, I'm not going to say feared, but man, you got to be careful and you got to get down to business. The time for fooling around is over. That's the point. So when we're looking at the Tao Manifesting Tarot energy for today, the theme is all together now. Co-create. You work on yourself, be the best that you can be. And then let that frequency, let that energy reach others like you. It will take communal effort. This is a situation where we cannot. I've heard people say, well, we'll protest, we'll shut down a business for a week, and that doesn't mean shit. Doesn't mean a goddamn thing. They don't care. They'll ride right past it. In fact, anytime they want to get tough, all they got to do is unplug you. Remember, everything is almost electric these days. All they got to do is hit the right algorithm. Boom, you got no power. You shut down their business for a week. They shut down your electricity for a week. Let's see who wins. Not going to be you. So this is time to get to action, and you have to start to prepare yourself. So it's all together now. It's a unifying energy. It's co-creation. That's what we're working on. Before I take off on the reading, we're going to begin with the astrology. Just want to have this opportunity to remind you about my email. I've had a bunch of them. I've now whittled them down to one, tau-tarot at proton.me, tau-tarot at proton.me. Please respond. You can say yes, no, kiss my ass. Doesn't make any difference. It's the communication. That's what I'm reaching out for. That's the special part for me. Tau-tarot at proton.me. Alrighty, so let's get to it. Astrologic is what I call this section. Let's take a look at the astrologic. Oh, a few months ago, I decided to do a little investigating. We're about 1 year away from the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. That'll be next July the 4th, 2026, if we last that long. And I said, let's use a little astrology, numerology, focus it on tarot. Let's take a look at American history. And I found out in doing an in-depth view, sort of a off-the-books kind of review, that since at least 1492, America has been at war with the bankers. First, the European bankers, then the largely Jewish bankers, and finally the American bankers, also largely Jewish. 1492, the bankers realized they were entering what they call the Brave New World. They could make a lot of money, a lot of riches. That was all they needed. They were off and running. By 1700, they had a guy by the name of Adam Smith rebrand the whole situation. Because up until that point, they have been using usury, which virtually every government, Catholic Church, in fact, many churches, many religions were against. It's charging interest for loans. It would decimate city states, whole countries, empires. In fact, the Jews were over 3,000 years kicked out of over 200 countries, 1,000 times total, and every time it was for the same reason, usury. It would completely drain all of the money out of the country, put it in the pockets of the Jews. So the kings, emperors, whatever, kicked him out. Well, in 1700, Adam Smith said, you know what, let's not call it usury anymore. Let's call it capitalism. Yeah, that sounds better, capitalism. It was the same thing, a wolf in sheep's clothing. We found out no sooner did the revolution end here in America that they set up the big banking center. We call it the Dow Jones Industrial Wall Street, but that's what it was. It was arranged by bankers. It was a way to keep filtering money from people. They also tried to set up and succeeded the first national bank of the United States. That went 20 years. That was the length of time they had on the contract. They wanted to do another 20 years. There was a little bit of a hiccup, but they got it. By the time they got the second 20 years, as the Bank of the United States, Andrew Jackson said, no, 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 no. We know what this game is played. I know you call it capitalism. It's usury. You're killing us. Stop. And we knew it was usury. Didn't, no point in hiding it. The guy who ran the Rothschild Emperor or Empire, same difference. 1803, the head of the Rothschild family bank said, I don't care what you do about the government. Doesn't make any difference to me. You do whatever you want to do. Make whatever laws you want to make. I want the control of the economy. That's usury. That is absolute cash cannibalism. And Andrew Jackson said so. They tried to assassinate him in the 1830s or 40s. They failed. Lincoln wanted to change it because that's really what the Civil War was about. It wasn't about slavery. It was about the South wanting to leave, establishing its own country, establishing its own money system. European Jewish bankers said no. Rothschild said no. So they killed him. Same thing with McKinley. Same thing with a number of other presidents. You don't mess with their money. Well, 1913, they get the Federal Reserve established finally here in the United States. No sooner do they do that than they set up the income tax because you need money to fund the reserve. They get women working because you get more taxes that way. With more people working, more taxes. They get us into World War I because they make profit off of war. Then we come out of the war. We need a little push, so they do the Roaring Twenties thing where the stock market goes apeshit, goes crazy. People making a whole bunch of money, crazy money, so that by 1929 we hit a depression, just like they wanted. And the depression is brutal. It changes American society permanently, and they get us into World War I. By the way, if you do a little digging into history, we knew about Pearl Harbor almost a year before it ever happened. British intelligence said, hey, watch this. Watch, it's very likely. Nobody did anything because they wanted to get us in the war. The American bankers or the Jewish bankers wanted to get us into war because that's how you make more money. That's how you help the economy from their point of view. So we go today from 1940 to 1945. There's a ground war, horrendous ground war. A lot of people die, and it fundamentally changes America. First of all, it gets us used to chaos and conflict. But it does other things. Depression ends. Women and minorities are working full time now. We develop the atomic bomb. We become the superpower in the world. So the bankers got just what they wanted: a lot of money, a lot of prestige, a lot of power. They got it all. Of course, 1945, the ground war ends and the real war begins. And we're seeing the results of that real war now. Looking at the astrology, it is not surprising we see Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto all in fire and air. What happens when you have a campfire? Starts to go out, or a fire in a fireplace. What you do is you use the bellows, right? You give it air. You give it air. What that increases the fire. That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. We got into this thing fast, furious, didn't have a chance to think about it, nothing. But that's the way they wanted it. You will find that salesmen of all kinds, whether they're bankers or car salesmen and anything in between, fast, fast, make a decision, fast, fast. You don't have time to think. You don't have time to think. Time running out, time running out. They don't want you to think, and that's exactly what happened. And we got ourselves into hip, deep shit that we're still working through today. And in fact, you could make the case that we're actually losing. We're giving up control, and we're real close. But it all really came to a head after World War II. They set us up, lined us up, and played us. Let's go to the meme. We're talking about one of the biggest plays recently within the last few years, and that is, of course, this pandemic bullshit. Here is some information now. Bill Gates is, God, he's up to, oh, man, he wants the mosquitoes, artificial foods. He wants to put genetics into our food system. Now he's teaming up with Trump to supposedly stop polio. Man, amazing. Amazing. And yet, the largest autopsy study ever with millions of people from the vax, millions, 75% of them died from the vaccines. It was supposed to be safe and effective. Yeah, sure. Now you're seeing the shadow of World War II. Here we come up to the missing link. Sticking with the subject, imagine convincing a species that's been on the earth for thousands of years. Imagine convincing that species they can't survive without drugs that didn't even exist 100 years ago. We were able to go thousands and thousands of years, do well. Oh, but now you can't live without our drugs. And then the reminder at the bottom of the page, what are we really dealing with? Yeah. So we get to the tarot. Let's take a look and see what we have here. Now, remember we were talking about the astrology, how powerful it was. Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, all in fire and air. The only exception was Jupiter. And that just focused us on our emotional connections. But what led us into World War II, what fueled us was fire and air combination, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And we're finding here that with the tarot, we're finding that same kind of energy. First card is the Emperor card. It is talking about structure, it's talking about leadership, it's about talking responsibility. Question is, are you looking for that structure and leadership outside of yourself? Or are you taking responsibility? Makes all the difference in the world. And it's huge. Right now, we have to take on that responsibility ourselves. Don't look for any government to help us. They won't do it. Don't look for any corporation to help us. They won't do it. We have to decide on the structure and leadership coming from us, and then we will attract others in that same vein. Remember, the whole theme of this is everybody pulling together, all together now, right? All together now, co-create. But it begins with each and every one of us grabbing ourselves by our gonads and saying, I will stand for something solid. I will be responsible. Next one up, Ace of Swords, honesty, breakthrough. When you decide that you are going to be responsible for you, you are going to stick to your value system no matter what, all of a sudden, this honesty with yourself creates breakthroughs, opportunities you hadn't seen before. And then we go to the Empress card, which is protection and abundance. Yes. But it's also more than that. It's fertility, but not in a sexual sense necessarily, but in a creative sense. To create anything is to be fertile. Whether it's with your loins or your brain, fertility shows in obvious ways. But you can't do it until you take the Emperor stand. You decide to take structure and leadership over your life. You decide to be honest with yourself. That's when the breakthrough occurs. And you begin to build within yourself, within your group. And we don't need big groups now. We want smaller tribal type groups. That will create the protection and abundance that we need to survive, because they're coming after us hard and fast. Should be obvious by now, but boy, it amazes me how many people just don't get it. But it's a time for all together now, co-creative. We're out of time. Thank you very much for visiting. I appreciate it. You make it all worthwhile. Hey, please don't forget, like and subscribe. It is more essential now than ever. They are playing games with the internet. Very quiet, very behind the scenes, very dangerous. Between now and the next time you and I do tarot together, however, peace and blessings.